if fundraising's not just about the bottom line? What if it is about who you become and what you believe in the process? And what if the journey is bigger than you and your ministry?
Welcome to Season 4 of It's Not About the Money. Join us as we examine elements of ministry fundraising through the unique lens of personal formation. Let's dive in.
Welcome back. This is It's Not About the Money, and today we are diving into a new series on church partnership. In a present age of global connectivity, the modern missionary may have partners far and wide. Yet we believe that partnership with the church, the local church, is still relevant. So we have developed this series with that conviction in mind. And joining me for today's conversation is Andy, who we all know and love, and also Corrie McKee. You might have heard Corrie. You might recognize her voice from previous episodes that we've had on the podcast, but she will actually be joining me throughout this series as she is the author of our church partnership curriculum. And Corrie is also a global worker with many years of experience who now has been living and working in the States, serves on a church with a missions board, and coaches in fundraising.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So maybe as we dive in, Corrie, is there anything else you would want to say to kind of fill in the gaps for our listeners of what you're bringing into this conversation?
I will say that I wrote this curriculum right when I got back from serving overseas. And at first, it was just kind of like a brain dump of everything that I knew and learned just from partnering with churches. And it was a fun activity to be able to just write it all down. But, as we have talked through it it's been 6 years since I put that out there. It's taken shape into an actual curriculum. And so I'm excited about how it might help other people.
Why was it important to you to just get it all out?
I think it was because I had so many churches that were partnering with me. I had a dozen. And as I was talking to people in the field, I realized that was kind of unusual.
It is.
Like most people don't have a dozen churches that are partnering with them. And I thought when I got home, hey, if I can get this many churches to partner with me, maybe I can help other people learn how to get churches to partner with them. And, it was kind of just learn as I go, and even sometimes school of hard knocks, making some bad decisions. But then in the end, I learned, how to do it. So yeah, hoping it can help some others.
I'm sure there were unique challenges and blessings to that too.
Yes. For sure. And we're definitely going to talk through those in the coming modules.
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah. And, as you said, Corrie, this has been taking shape for years. And I know that we've had conversations, and we've even brought Andy in at times just around how the dynamic of the local church has changed so much in that time and through COVID. And really, there's a lot of nuanced factors when it comes to this conversation. And so even though this started 6 years ago, like you said, it has kind of evolved and is continuing to evolve with the way we currently find ourselves relating to the church and organizations and things like that. And so, yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation. And, the purpose of this episode is really just to kind of cast some vision, set the stage for kind of unpacking the modules in the weeks to come. So maybe let's just start, Corrie, from your own experience, Andy, from your experience in coaching others, like all of us can chime in. What are the benefits of partnering with churches?
Well, I think the most obvious blessing that people think of is the financial support. But I think with churches, there's a different angle of the financial support that is the benefit. And that is, there's kind of two that I think. One is regular support that you can count on, that is very secure because this is an organization.
Right.
This is not an individual. This is not a household. This church is not going to lose their job. This church is less likely to change their giving priorities year to year. So, it's an organization. So you can count on that gift. And the other part is that it's more substantial gifts for the most part. It's going to be your, 3-digit or 4-digit gifts. And so, which an individual or family may give smaller amounts. So the financial support is great because it's something that you can count on more.
Yeah. I like that point of stability because there is typically a group of people or even a budget committee that is thinking through the ramifications of their giving year after year. And so it does feel more secure.
Yeah. Corrie sits on one of those groups, right?
Well, yeah. And a lot of churches like to give 1/3 to 1/2 or more of a missionary's budget, especially if that missionary is from that church and they're the sending church.
Wow.
So
now you had 12 churches.
Yeah. None of them were giving that much. They were all kind of rural country churches.
Okay.
But all together, they comprised a large amount of my, large percentage of my budget.
Yeah. And Andy, your experience was that your church gave a substantial amount of yours, correct?
They did. They wanted to be kind of a primary sender, kind of an anchor in our donation. It was substantial. I mean, we still had a lot of work to do, but man, that was a great boost for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my experience, I think my church was like 1/3, which is still substantial.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome, Heather.
Yeah.
And I think we should note too that denominationally, like all churches are different.
Right.
Yeah.
Even within the same denomination. But there are some denominations that will ask their missionaries to go church to church and talk to all the churches in the region. And so it's less focused on even on individual givers because all the individuals in the church are giving to the church and the church kind of funnels and disperses the giving. So that's not necessarily what we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think that, Andy, you're right. Like it does happen where individuals will give to the missions fund in a church and the missions fund will funnel it out. And I think if you are a fundraiser who is going to get a gift from a church, you need to figure out first how that church operates in that,
right?
Because you want to enter in knowing how are they expecting you to network. Like some churches may allow you to expand your support audience to new groups, like small groups that you could go speak to. And, networking could provide you with access to new individuals who could come onto your support team in addition to that church. But some churches may rather you not do that. So it's important to figure it out before you start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think one benefit is maybe just the expanded ability to network within a church environment. You may feel like, well, I know 50 people and I just don't know how that's going to get done. But consider going to people in your church and saying, well, what would you suggest? Who do you think I should reach out to? Maybe going to a church leader, and then you walk into that group. Maybe it's a Sunday school or maybe it's a life group or whatever, and saying, hey, Pastor so-and-so said I should talk to you guys. Like that automatically gives you a foot in the door and exposes you to more people that you didn't know, people in different demographics. Maybe if you're a younger person, like you're meeting older people that have a real heart for missions and maybe have some discretionary income. So it can really be a bigger effort and a contribution to mobilize more of the church.
Well, and with that, Andy, because we firmly believe that it's not about the money, that there's more that God is up to. With that opportunity to network, meet more people, it's not just about like looking for other people that might be able to fill the need. We really feel like this is an invitation not only for your own formation, but the formation of those within the church as well. And so, we see over and over in Scripture that it is for our good to give.
Yes.
So, finding people, inviting them into partnership, inviting them into vision for what God is doing in whatever part of the world you're working in, inviting them to align with that, whether it be with their time in prayer or financial resources or a lamp when you come back and you need to furnish your home when you land back in your home country or something, right? Like there's just so many ways that it's forming people. It's inviting them into being dependent on the Lord and to be part of what He's up to.
Especially maybe with those smaller country churches, my guess is they didn't have a whole host of international missionaries that they were supporting. So you were kind of
That's
unique.
exactly what I was going to say next.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, because they are in a rural area and they may have never even met someone from another country or never been to another country, or they may not even have met a missionary yet. And so when you go and you speak at these churches or you connect with these people and partner with them, you're exposing them to new aspects of God's global mission. And one of my favorite aspects of this is exposing the children and the teens of the church to that, because they are so excited to learn, teaching them songs in different languages, teaching them words and showing them this is what people wear in this country. They love it. And so I think that the Lord may foster even, new vision within that church to open their minds and their hearts to cross-cultural work.
Yeah. And you know what I really love? So as you were talking about working with children and youth, it just brought to mind some stories that we've even shared on the podcast of what it looks like when kids get vision for generosity and how they save up the little they have to give, right? Like one of our prior guests talked about how some children in her church had been saving and invited her over one day and gave her this, obscure amount, like $139.52. But it turned out that obscure amount was exactly what her new Visa charge would be that she had found out about. So it's like, wow, incredible. And
amazing.
Yeah. And it's just, I feel like it's like a next level beauty unlocked when kids get that vision. And when you see them use the little bit of agency they have to contribute, it's so beautiful.
We experienced that too. We were doing a yard sale. Our core team was having a yard sale for us, and we just kind of combined all of our stuff together and just in a neighborhood. And these kids biked by and kind of like checked it out and like kind of talked to us like, this is what we're doing it for. Like, it's just donations, whatever you guys can do. And so, I took off. They circled back later that day, and it was obvious they had like emptied their piggy banks and handed us just sacks of coins. It was like, oh, you can tell somebody's been raised right with that giving. Yeah. And also I would say, like, I've talked to people in coaching as we get into their own stories of what has called them into missions and called them into this line of work. A lot of times it's, well, a missionary came to my church. So you are planting seeds. Like, that is not insignificant for the future generation. That's a great point, Corrie.
That's my story. Yeah. I mean, I remember at missions conference time at church being in the kids ministry and the missionaries coming and teaching us songs in Spanish. And like, that was the beginning of planting the seeds, in my heart. And that was one of the benefits that I had written down, is that, we may be introducing potential future workers. They may be adults, but they may also be kids. And God wants to plant seeds in people's hearts to think about their calling through us.
I love that. Because, listener, it's not just about your bottom line.
Right.
It's not just about what's going to get me funded and focused on my ministry. Maybe the Lord is asking you to think a little bit bigger and wants you to be a part of something more than just where you're living and whatever the environment is, the ministry is. It's He wants to broaden your impact.
Yeah, that's great. Something that feels important to say is actually drawing from a conversation that we had with Drew Rimke at the start of season 3, season 2, I think season 3. Yeah, season 3.
Sounds right.
And he distinguished, what does a sending org do? What does a church do? And I think that in an age of such robust options in sending orgs that have such care for their people, sometimes people can wonder, well, is the local church still relevant? Like, do I still need to be sent by my local church? And I just thought that Drew did a really great job kind of talking about the different lanes that each provides and how working together, how it's such a strong support for the sent worker.
Yes.
And so having a sending org does not displace the need for the local church. In any way. Yeah.
Remind me, what were his points about how they can complement each other?
I remember that he spoke to how, and we've had others since speak to this as well, that the sending church, the local church, is going to have more of a heartbeat on your long-term formation, on how you show up long-term. They're going to be more invested in that, whereas the sending organization is going to be more dialed into specific training or skills that you might need for cross-cultural context,
Yes.
or providing you with immediate resources versus the like long-term care resources that a local church would step in to
Sure.
provide.
Okay. Yeah. More on the ground and then more kind of heart and like preparatory
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
Any thoughts come to mind for you on that, Corrie?
Yeah, I think something that's coming back to mind is the three-legged stool
Yeah.
of the missionary call is like the local church, the missions organization, and the missionaries' efforts to fundraise and prepare themselves. So it's all of that combined, and the missions organization and the local church, whether that's the missions committee or the missions pastor, should be in communication with each other. Like they need to know each other so that they can both support this missionary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other benefits you guys can think of before we kind of explore some other areas? Yeah, so I guess I'd also just love for us to have an opportunity to speak from our own experiences of being supported by churches to whatever degree that looks like, whether it be financially or in some other way.
I want to hear more about Corrie's 12 churches.
Yeah. My home church that I was raised in was definitely my first church to come on board, which was a huge confirmation to my call. But then, at the time I was just graduating from college. So I had my college church, which came on board, and I'm a people person. So I know a lot of people. And so a lot of my friends at the time were, just out of college or still in college and couldn't give, but they all said, "Oh, let me connect you to my home church back in my hometown and you can come and talk to them." And so had a lot of just random churches that I had never even heard of or met before, that because that church loved that person who was my friend, they also trusted me and I got to come and share with them. So that turned into monthly partnerships. And also I had multiple revenue streams within the churches.
Okay.
So that was pretty cool too. And I wasn't even planning on that, but it just happened. So for example, at one church, a Sunday school teacher really got on board with what I was doing. So he had his adult Sunday school class have an ice cream social every quarter.
Nice.
And they would donate at the ice cream social. And then they would give it to their missionaries. And I was one of them. And just things like that. And then individual donors who would come and join my team as they heard me speak at their churches.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. When we were first going, which was eons ago, we were part of a big church. It was a mega church in Phoenix, in Scottsdale. And we were part of a young adults, a newly married class. And so we got the call. We felt like, okay, we're gonna do this. So we went to church leadership, and they had a pretty extensive process. And they're like, okay, we want you to take these classes before we'll send you. And we had no problem with that, but we just didn't have the window. So they couldn't support us as a big church officially, but they were like, yeah, go and talk to your friends and fundraise at your Sunday school. And so we did that, and they were very generous. Versus when we went back many years later, the church that I went to, and I'm still going to, at the time did not have a huge vision for international missions. They had a heart for a few things, and then they are big into domestic church planting. That is where their heartbeat is, and they are very consistent and fruitful in that, I would say. But at the time, they had been I don't know if challenged is the right word. They had been having conversations with a missionary that was called to the creative access world into Bible translation. And he had wonderful conversations with them. And this is what I appreciate about my church, is that they took that and they just analyzed it as Bereans and pivoted. And they kind of enfolded the fullness of the Great Commission into their vision. And so we had the benefit of entering into this season where they were like, yeah, we want to do something. We don't really know how to do this. We haven't done it before. And we want to be really supportive. And so they were all in. And so we got all the attention, all the focus, and it was fantastic.
Mm.
And so, yeah, we came back and we're still part of that church and love to see how that's developed.
Mm. Yeah.
That's
And
awesome. You're open to exploring a new aspect of being involved in God's mission.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a natural part of maybe church growth and development. You plant a church and you have different focuses, and how do we? First, it's like we need a building, and then suddenly we need more staff and nursery workers, and now we need to do short-term projects and missions, and then it kind of just grows and grows and grows, and it feels like eventually there's a heartbeat for we should increase the footprint. We should reach all aspects of the Great Commission.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no element of ministry is a set it and forget it, where it's just kind of like, okay, we're locked in and this is just what it's going to look like. This is how God's going to provide. This is how we're going to invest. Like, it's just God's always changing up what he's up to, right? So
keeps us on our toes.
Yeah. It's good to stay in alignment with that. Yeah. So what would you say are some common obstacles or difficulties that people might face in desiring to partner with churches?
I think it might be hard to know where to start.
Yeah.
Yeah, because most people only have their church that they go to, that they're a member of, and they're not sure even where to start there, especially if it's a big church. Who do they talk to? How do they get from point A to Z, I think that with partnering with churches, you have to take the long view.
Yes.
Because it takes many conversations and many relationships to develop. It takes a lot of time to really not only get your foot in the door, but finally get that gift processed, but then continue, because church partnerships, you have to continue to keep up the relationship, and they want to keep the relationship with you. So
yes,
it's definitely, it's a long view.
Yeah.
They don't want to be just a checkbook, right?
Right.
Most of the time.
Yeah. Well, in it, you have some unique considerations to navigate when partnering with the church, because anybody that is providing financially is stewarding funds that are not just their own, right? I think as believers, we understand that ultimately we are accountable to God for how we steward what he gives us. But a church is actually also, there's like another level of, of course they're accountable to God, but they're actually stewarding what's been entrusted to them by their congregation. And so, I know that it can feel really off-putting for ministry workers to have to answer a lot of specific questions around what's happening in ministry and things like that. But it's just this really interesting tension to navigate, where it's not about your performance, yet churches often do want insight into what's happening, because they want to be able to steward well what they're being entrusted with. They want to be able to communicate back to the congregation. And so, it's just this line of walking in a willingness to kind of be accountable to the church without it feeling like they only care about your performance. Do you guys see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that it has, what you're saying, Heather, has a lot to do with the fact that this is an organizational relationship, not an individual relationship. And organizations, even when they're a nonprofit or ministry or a church, they still want an ROI. They want to know, what is their return on investment for this gift, and is it making an impact? So like you said, it doesn't mean that you have to perform and achieve and all of these great things, but at least you should be honest in giving them updates and sharing what's going on in your work.
Yeah. And hopefully there's somebody at the church that can advocate for you and will help everybody to realize that sometimes in some of the places that you live and work, the ROI is difficult to measure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Especially in the more difficult to reach places that are antagonistic.
Yeah.
The return on investment is not necessarily, hey, I planted all these seeds and I watered them and look at this harvest. It's, I removed the boulders from the plot of land.
Yeah.
I removed the obstacles.
Well, and that's why it's so important for you to be known, for there to be trust and rapport established,
right. Yeah.
and for there to be connection, that it's not just a funnel for more money, but it's actually a partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Very
I think,
true.
yeah, and I think obstacles, I've touched on this already, but I think generally the bigger the church, probably the more systems they have in place to evaluate, does this person align with where we want to give our money to? And some of the more generous churches, I'm thinking of like College Church in Wheaton, very generous with their giving, but there are a substantial amount of hoops that you have to jump through to be on their radar. So that's just something to think about too. I think another challenge would be if the church's vision doesn't necessarily align with what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. So they could have in their mind, like, we're all about this, this, and this. And the bullseye is church planting in this part of the world. But if you're doing something else, maybe you're kind of on the outskirts, that can be challenging.
Yeah. And also clarifying, because, in your instance, Andy, the church leaders that were weighing opportunities to invest in something that was outside the scope of their current vision, that was an invitation to a changed perspective and a pivot, right?
Right.
I don't think God is always doing that. I think sometimes he is having people stay the course with the current vision he's given, and it might be a no.
Yeah.
But I think it's just like with individual partners, a no doesn't have to be rejection, and that instead of rejection, it could be an invitation to know that God will provide somewhere else. And like Callie Davis said, it can be clarifying and even affirming to you that these people are in alignment with what God is asking of them, and they're committed to doing what he's asking of them. And that just happens to mean that they're not the person to join your team.
Right. And you can't assume, well, this church is off, or they're broken, or they're misguided because they don't agree with what I'm called to do.
Right.
Right. All of it falls under the umbrella of mission and Great Commission. Yeah.
Corrie, as somebody who sits kind of on the other side and evaluates or assesses fit and alignment and things like that, as somebody that sits on a missions committee, do you have any input that you think would be helpful to share?
Yeah, I'm just thinking of my own church where I'm on the missions committee, and I shared this in the Drew Remke follow-up podcast, but we do have a pretty strict rubric about who we support and how we support them, just because it's a big church.
Okay.
And so we have different groups. So we have our partner missionaries, where we give like a third of their budget, and they are church planting among unreached people groups. So that's the rubric for them. But then we also have a separate budget for anybody else who's doing any other things.
Nice.
And so they're people who, young adults who are going on a 1 to 2 year mission experience, or summer mission trips, college students, or a family that wants to go on a summer trip together. So that separate budget is what we use for those folks. And so we also have this thing called Lifeline Partners, where we have one family in the church that's designated, matched with a missionary family that's on the field full time. They provide regular contact with them, friendship, spiritual encouragement, emotional support. So I think that it may feel easy within a big church, if you're a missionary that's supported by a big church, to fall through the cracks. But you have your Lifeline partner checking in with you a couple times a month and praying for you, sending you packages, mail, whatever. Okay, I'm not forgotten. And if I need to get in touch with this church, I can talk to my Lifeline partner. So
that's great.
That's one thing that we have. We also have a program that we're starting this year. It's called Pathfinders. So this is a mentorship program where we're matching older, more experienced people who have been on the field, maybe retired missionaries, with spending time with younger people who want to explore missions as a career, helping them walk through personal discipleship, spiritual preparation before they sign up with a missions organization. So there's some things that our missions committee is involved in.
That's great.
Yeah.
Very comprehensive.
Yes, it is. Actually, as you're speaking to that recap episode we did, I recall that one of the obstacles or barriers that people might have is that, there are still differences in the ways people are supported by churches. I think I remember at that time you said that it was more difficult for example, a single female to be a partner missionary versus a family. And so, I'm not really sure that we have any concrete answers to or solutions necessarily for that reality. I think that it's good to name it, to bring awareness that there are still differences in the way churches might come alongside people. But I think that my encouragement, listener, if you're a person kind of in that situation, I think my encouragement would be whatever, perceived brokenness or injustice we might see, the Lord is always there, and that is not going to stop what He wants to do with you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it can be frustrating if this is my only church.
Yes.
And I have no other options, but I don't fit the exact parameters, or I'm not in the center of the target.
Right.
That doesn't mean that something's wrong or broken with you or the vision or them.
Right.
It's just He's asking you to do it a different way.
Yeah. Or maybe He's using that to agitate the current thought around it, kind of like He did for your leadership, right? They pivoted.
Right.
They weighed and they pivoted. Yeah. And so it could be that your perseverance in that is something that makes, the missions committee or the church take a fresh look at that.
Yeah. I think the takeaway is be open to how God might use you.
Yes.
And not just be, again, narrowly focused on this little thing that I'm trying to do. God has a bigger picture probably than you do.
Yes. And
definitely.
And trust Him and not the system or the perceived way forward.
Yeah, your plan. Yeah, that's good.
All right, so as we wrap up our conversation today, I just kind of want to give a taste of what's to come. So we are going to explore examples of church partnership, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament. We're going to look at things you can do to prepare to connect with churches. We are going to talk about tailoring a communication plan to a church, securing gifts from partner churches, and investing in church relationships. So I think that all of this together is just going to provide not a formula, but definitely a framework, a path towards exploring how God might be equipping you to bring churches into your partnership team.
I wish you guys could see what I'm looking at as Heather is flipping through all these pages of documents. It's going to be robust.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think they've left anything out.
Yeah. And Corrie has put a lot of hard work and soul into this. And so we're really excited to share it.
That's great. So if somebody hasn't subscribed or hasn't purchased the full curriculum, they could do this just like a one-off.
They could. I would say that we are going to be building significantly off themes that we explore in the normal curriculum. But this is something that those that have already gone through the normal curriculum, this is something that will be available to them as a supplement to that.
Okay.
And will be available on our site. But
it could be standalone. If you're like, man, I want to dive deeply into this. This is what I need at this time in my life. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, I can see this being really helpful for veteran missionaries who have been on the field for years, who have a lot of individual donors, and maybe they have some older donors who, they may need to get some younger ones and not know where to start. Church partnerships could be a great way to supplement that need for more partners. So I think this could be really helpful for those veterans. Yeah. As well.
Awesome.
Great. Well, hopefully this has given you just some insight into we're always finding new values for why God created us to be in community, why the local church is such a dear thing to the Father. So hopefully this just invites you into a deeper revelation of that and encouragement in your own efforts. Thanks for being here, guys.
We'll see you next time. Thanks, Corrie. It's Not About the Money is presented by Provisio Fundraising Solutions. Provisio equips support-based workers with flexible training, practical resources, and one-on-one coaching. Find out more at provisiofundraising.com.